Go to a coffee shop, spent a few hours writing a print newsletter. Not literally this one, but that kind of 4-page thing that I'd like to send that in the mail.
If you buy into the whole philosophy of helping your clients before you sell to them, it's coming at it from the point of view of helping them in as many different ways as you can.
Whereas with the physical mail, you're giving someone a mystery box. And who doesn't want to open a mystery box? By the time they've opened it and they've seen what the content is, you've captured the attention.
And if you haven't got a mechanism for regularly creating ever more interesting, valuable information ahead of the sale, then you're missing out. Does marketing and content creation ever feel hard and time-consuming? What if it didn't have to be that way?
Join Rob Drummond,
Matthew Bliss,
and me, Pete Daly-Dickson, your ideal companions on the journey to a value-first approach to business growth, here on Help Before You Sell.
I was just telling Pete, Matt, that obviously I was outside earlier because that's what I do now. So, people watching the YouTube version of this show will see me go gradually browner over the next few months and then gradually paler towards the end of the year. So you can tell when the recording was, but how brown is Rob and is he outside?
Listen, they'll be tracking it by my hair because I get haircuts so infrequently that I'll be short. And then now that's like, okay, 3 months, he's going to get a haircut soon.
I spent the beginning before you arrived dismantling my self-tape studio, putting it back into my podcast studio. And, I could put that up.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Always been when I've done it in the past, it's always been a real pain hanging it. But it now fits absolutely perfectly from wall to wall. So now when I record my self-tapes.
Nice. And as long as you don't wear the same color as the background, I can put you on a beach and stuff.
You could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah, we'll put you in front of the forest in Macbeth.
So I do it like this today, and then you can put a backdrop on me.
Not with that shirt, we can't.
If you want to look like a disembodied head,
yeah, you just put like a floating head, wouldn't you? Like,
yeah.
Anyway, that was a nice discovery today. That my backdrop fits nicely between the walls. I don't have to worry about getting a tripod on it.
It's good when that stuff happens.
I have a nice segue into the topic, though. So today, so far, I have. It's been a good day today. So the sun's out. I've been out on the motorbike. Not been out on the motorbike for a while. Go to a coffee shop. Spent a few hours writing a print newsletter. So not literally this one, but that kind of 4-page thing that I'd like to send that in the mail. Come back, done a bit of work outside, been barefoot running, and now it's all going to go downhill because I'm talking to you guys.
Agree.
Fuck you very much.
Yeah. But yeah, so today's topic is print newsletters. I think that the only two ways of really writing them are to. So I had an opportunity this morning to go to a coffee shop quite early because it was my daughter's birthday yesterday. So I had family over, and then this morning I was like, oh, I've actually got childcare. I can go out to a cafe at like 6:30 in the morning and just like do like 2 hours of writing. And that for me is probably the best way it happens. I go to a coffee shop. I obviously take my laptop. I put my laptop on airplane mode, so I can't like distract myself endlessly with nonsense or with Telegram messages from YouTube asking me things or new product ideas from Pete. Like all of that, affirmations about the month ahead. All of that can wait. So I'm on airplane mode and just do some writing, and that to me is like my preferred way of doing it. I think the other way is like getting help with it, and I think for a lot of business owners, it's like, well, do you commit to the 2 hours early morning, or it could be late evening if you're a weird person, you like to do things in the evening instead of going to bed. I know people like to do that. It's not my way of doing things, but I think to me those are the two options. If you're going to produce like a substantial piece of work. So my print newsletters end up being about 2,500 words, which could be a few things. So for the Help Before You Sell print newsletter that we've just started, what I do is I take all of the episodes from the previous month, so typically 4, sometimes 5, and I kind of curate the best parts and kind of assemble that into 2,500 word summary. I kind of quite like it as a constraint because it's generous enough to kind of allow a bit of space, but it's not like you can't get carried away and start writing an accidental dissertation.
What's the point? Why?
Because what I've found generally is that people with money like to receive stuff in the mail that they can hold, that they can read, that hangs about their desk. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't think the print newsletter is ever like the last click conversion. It's not like someone reads this and then this is the thing they go, right, I'm going to sign up for. I'm going to go to activate your podcast. I'm going to fill in the podcast strategy. I mean, it could be, I don't know. I don't actually have data on any of this, but I think it's a supporting piece where actually they read this earlier in the week or in the month or the day. They read it at a time that's convenient for them. So it could be even while the kettle is boiling. It could take, I mean, you could scan this in 2 minutes. I mean, you can read it in 10 and scan it in 2. So that's why it's the length it is. It's sent in the mail because people don't get that much mail. It isn't bills and boring stuff or circulars or like the direct mail that you do get. It's like, it's those letters where it's like, oh, did you know that there's been an accident on your road? We'll come in and we'll install a brand new home security system for like £2,500. When can we book your appointment? So that's like the level of direct mail that we're kind of competing with. Whereas on social media, you're competing with like every man and his dog posting 74 times an hour because that's apparently what we need to be doing. So it's much less cluttered. It's much more personal. It's more permanent in that it hangs about unless they put it in the bin, which might happen. But I think if it's good, it will hang about. I think what I suspect people do is they open it over the bin and they go, oh, actually, that's got a few good points in, and then it migrates from the bin to the desk or the coffee table. And then if it's really good, it maybe migrates to a special folder with like post-it notes on and things to kind of refer back to. And
I guess it's not. So if you buy into the whole philosophy of helping your clients before you sell to them, it's coming at it from the point of view of helping them in as many different ways as you can, and not assuming that everyone likes to be helped in the same way. Some people like listening to podcasts, some people don't. So for those that don't, what are you going to do? Well, you can still have your podcast, but you can take that same content and repurpose it as a print newsletter, or repurpose it as a blog post, or repurpose it as whatever. But with everything, we come back to this conversation first approach, if you like, is get stuff out of your head from conversation and then decide what you're going to do with it consistently over time.
There is a kind of demographic aspect to it. I think if your core demographic is under 25, are they going to read a print newsletter? I don't know. I don't profess to understand people who are under 25 that much.
I don't think my under 25s have read anything other than what's on a screen in the last 10 years.
What is this paper? Like,
apart from my daughter, to be fair, she reads books.
I think the environment is looking for a swing back, though. Like the under 25s are wearing what parents in the 80s used to wear. Fashion is making a circular flick back to what was enjoyed a couple of decades ago. I think media is going to do the same thing. The emergence of the email list and the newsletter, as opposed to other digital mediums like social media, is really starting to ramp up. And I think what we're talking about here is the next step for that. Like, get into their hands. Don't compete with the rest of the internet. Like, as long as you get their address and they've consented to receiving the newsletter, then you get on their desk, you get into their kitchen, whatever proximity to the bin it might be. It's a space that is unoccupied. And I think younger people, they'll do the thing where they discover what cassette tapes were or floppy disks were and be entirely enamored by the retrograde nostalgia that they empower themselves with.
I don't think floppy disks are coming back
they're
anytime.
consigned to the dustbin of history, aren't they?
But they have to know what the save button comes from.
Well, exactly. Why they just assume. I mean, yeah, it would be interesting to find out for someone that has never seen a floppy disk why they think that the save icon looks like it does. You got no.
That's a good point. Yeah. I follow a few people who have been sending print newsletters consistently, month on month, for years and years and years. Perry Marshall is one good example. He sends his letters about 16 pages.
Wow.
So a bit longer. And it only goes out to paying members. So you have to be in his New Renaissance membership group in order to get the print newsletter. But it is marketing. It's just that you're paying to receive. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Where if you ask people, "Would you like to receive more marketing?" they're gonna go, "No." But as Howard Gossage once said, people read whatever interests them, and sometimes that's an ad or a print newsletter. And it doesn't. I think the nice thing about a print newsletter is you can be a bit. I mean, you can be as salesy as you want. It's your print newsletter, but I think that the space of it, the 2,500 word aspect of it, means that even in full Pete Daly-Dickson sales mode, like you're not going to get to 2,500 words. I don't think. You're probably going to have to give some insight, give some commentary, and even if what you have to say is in your perspective the same as what everyone else is saying, like people still want to hear from you. Like they still want to hear your perspective and your take on things.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to address actually was that there's a conception that sending direct mail is very expensive, and I think this stems from the pre-internet days where, back in my first marketing jobs, we sent a lot of direct mail. We sent more direct mail than digital communications. Like email marketing was there and it was emerging, but yeah, it was a few years away before kind of Infusionsoft came on the scene and that kind of thing. I remember like the earliest email days we were using a system called World Merge, which sent emails, which blasted emails in their thousands through your own internet service provider.
And you could do that then?
Yeah, and you could do that then with like no unsubscribe option. So of course everyone clicked to the "this is spam" button, and then we actually had our company domain blacklisted, which wasn't fun. But yeah, back in those days, we'd send a lot of direct mail. We'd send probably about 5,000 pieces at a time, and we'd maybe split them into 5 groups of 1,000 letters, and we'd do a bit of testing, or we'd test different audiences and that kind of thing, and put different response codes on the letters that went in those envelopes. But obviously 5,000 times a couple of quids, or £1.50, let's say, obviously that adds up. Yeah, it's maybe not a huge deal for a big enterprise, but I think at our kind of solopreneur type level, you're kind of looking at a reasonable investment. Where if you send 5,000 letters and nobody responds, like that's a bit of a punch in the face.
Yeah.
So I think that thinking is kind of stuck, and it's like no, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is having like your inner circle of people who are already following you, already interested in what you have to say, want to hear from you more often. They want the print newsletter. They might even pay for the print newsletter. So you're not even doing it at a loss. Even if you charge them like £5 a month or something, like it's still going to cover the cost of getting the print newsletter to them. So it doesn't have to be expensive. Like it could just be that you're mailing 20 people a month. And the mailing costs actually aren't that expensive. I mean,
it's less than a first-class stamp these days.
It's less than the first-class stamp.
Yeah.
It's less than the price, much less than the price of a cost of a click on Google Ads, LinkedIn ads, Meta ads, any paid advertising click. And if you think about how many clicks people buy and how often those clicks are wasted, how often do people just accidentally click on an ad, especially on their phone? They're trying to do something in an app, and you accidentally have a fat thumb and you tap an ad and you go, oh no. It's like, well, bang, that advertiser's been charged for a click. You were never going to buy. Compared to that, you've delivered something that's going to hang about in their desk or on the coffee table for a week, longer, months, who knows? And it gives you much more space. If you think about how much space you have in a Google ad, how much slice of attention do you have? Even if it's a social media ad, even if it's a video ad, like you maybe get 45 seconds of attention on average to a coldish audience. Here, you've got 2,500 words. And it's a mistake to assume that people are going to read all 2,500 words. Like this does not give you a license to be boring for 2,500 words. We had Gord Vickman on the show yesterday, and he was saying that first and foremost, you have to be entertaining and you have to tell stories. And those insights apply just as much to podcasting as to print newsletters. So it's not an invitation for you to waffle on for 2,500 words.
There are two things. First, you mentioning that the cost is very cheap, I think is very important, because the first place my brain went for the distribution of the newsletter and it being a low cost was in the old days of the internet, where if you had a viral video that you hosted on a server that you distributed yourself, you often paid for people to access that content. And so if millions of people started accessing your 480p video of whatever it is, your server costs would, balloon for that month and you could go into debt.
To put you out of business.
Yeah. And I imagine in this case, perhaps you'd need to be like Hawk Tour levels of virality for people to sign up for a newsletter and for it to bankrupt you, which is a very good thing, I guess. The other part is that you talked about the Google ads. I think a lot of the Google ads stuff is about capturing the attention to then get the click. Whereas with the physical mail, you're giving someone a mystery box. And who doesn't want to open a mystery box? It's why loot boxes in video games have been such a big problem. It's essentially like gambling. You have their attention. By the time they've opened it and they've seen what the content is, you've captured the attention. They're having a look at it. So it's almost more effective than a Google ad and even cheaper. It seems like a very easy sell for someone to want to do this for themselves.
And the other thing to remember, of course, is that the more information you have about your prospects before they become clients, the better. And having a print newsletter gives you a legitimate reason to ask for someone's physical mailing address. And then at some point in time, you might ask them, in a very natural, organic way when their birthday is, and then you can send them birthday cards in the mail, or depending on your business, it might not be appropriate. But the more ways you have of staying in contact with your potential ideal clients, surely it's got to be a good thing.
People rely on email too much. People, even if someone opts in on their work email, like if they leave that company, or if I opt in on my work email and like I change my domain name like 17 times a year, so that email address is probably going to stop working as soon as that domain name expires. But if you've got my mailing address as well, and before you delete me from, so you might see that I bounced. You might see that in your email system that my address is part bounced, so the address no longer exists. If you've got my mailing address, you could send me it could be like almost like a tongue-in-cheek mailer. So the mailing house that we use for the Help Before You Sell print newsletter, it can also send letters, it can also send postcards. So it doesn't have to be that you send them a print newsletter before you delete them. You could just send them a postcard saying, by the way, couldn't get through to you before. Has there been a mistake? Head to this link to update your details. When you update your details, we'll also give you this as a gift for coming back.
You mentioned Mailing House there. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we use a service called Stamp, which is STANNP. I think every time you have to spell the name of something, I always think it's a bad name. So I don't like the name of it. I do like the service. And yeah, the idea basically is that in our CRM system where we have our contact details, if someone adds their mailing address, we can trigger a mailing that is pre-set up in Stamp. So we're not here stuffing the envelopes. It's not. If this was reliant on me, and I don't even have a printer anymore, so I'd have to go to the library around the corner and like print out the thing and then stuff it in an envelope. So yeah, we're not doing any of that. So it gets printed and mailed automatically at a lower cost than I would be able to buy a stamp at the local post office.
Yeah, because they're doing in bulk.
Yeah, and stamps are just another way of extorting us, I think. So yeah, it's actually quite hands-free, and it's just a case of thinking through, well, where does this sit in the journey? And as you were saying, Matt, it doesn't replace Google ads, or it doesn't replace your LinkedIn ads or whatever, because they're at the first point that maybe people first come across you. But this is like, okay, we now want to deepen the relationship. So we've got our core podcast episodes, which, as we were just discussing yesterday with Gord, are actually like assets, not episodes. I think the print newsletter comes in at that point, because it's also a really handy litmus test, because the most likely people to buy from you will give you their print mailing address in exchange for something of value. And that's what we do with our letters. So yeah, there's a monthly cost to receive the Help Before You Sell print newsletter, but you can get the first one free of charge. It's on us. And that is a litmus test. That's a test to say, okay, who is most likely to be interested in doing some work with this? Because it's pretty, if I was a betting man, I'd say they're probably going to be in that group.
And of course, link in the show notes if you'd like to give it a try for yourself. Now, I very quickly need to point out a big technological elephant in the room, linking back to how you wrote the newsletter in the beginning, Rob. Going to your coffee shop for 2 hours on airplane mode, you're probably not sitting there with your feet up drinking your strawberry sprinkled frappa latte almond milk chino, letting AI do it for you. So I'd be very curious how much for our newsletters you use AI for, and how much is your own creativity, I guess.
Great question.
Yeah. So for the newsletter I was working on this morning, that was for my main business outside of the work that we do together. And for that one, I do write it. It's not AI generated. It is me writing it for 2 hours. That's also a conscious decision because I am the first reader of those words. So that is a mechanism for me inspecting my own thoughts. For the letter that I do for Help Before You Sell, that is a summary of the main insights from our ramblings on these conversations for people who don't want to listen to us for 30 minutes a week or 20 minutes a week or whatever it is. So then for Help Before You Sell, I do make much more use of AI to firstly get hold of the transcript and get hold of a good transcript. I then use an AI tool called Claude to tidy up that transcript. There is a human step. It's not all AI. It's just using AI to do a bit of the
heavy lifting stuff, isn't it?
The heavy lifting. There is very much still a human part of saying, okay, well, actually, having tidied up the transcript, what are the parts that really merit going in the print newsletter? And my system basically is I have the transcript open. I have it open in a notepad file, so it's very high tech. Works on airplane mode. I have a second notepad file open, and I just copy and paste things open. But it's like, okay, that makes the cut. That makes the cut. And then once I've moved it all over, I kind of move stuff about and go, actually, well, that kind of relates to this. And then I do a bit of moving about. And then eventually it gets pasted into a tool called Scribus, which is an open source version of Adobe InDesign, which I use for the design of the print newsletter.
Okay. Didn't know that. So roughly how much time do you spend on it, just to give the listener an idea?
For Help Before You Sell, yeah, this is an emerging question, isn't it? I would suggest all in, including proofing and setting up in Scribus, probably about 3 hours.
3 hours a month?
Yeah, about 3 hours a month. And there's going to be more time the first time you do it, partly because there's always the learning curve. But I've now got my template set up in Scribus where I'm not editing, unless I'm adding images in and stuff, which happens occasionally. If we've referenced a model or something, I might put an image in, and that takes a bit of time to then adjust the template around that image. But if I'm just copying and pasting text in, I just copy and paste it and make sure that nothing's weird has happened in the meantime. But yeah, I'd suggest about 3 hours. I think if it's taking too much longer, there's probably some efficiency gains that could be done.
Would you say there are any reasons not to have a print newsletter?
all
of your audience is age 12 and doesn't read.
I don't think learning to read is a good criticism.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't think of any major reason, you know, for especially for our audience who are really kind of expertise led, often service providers who are doing meaningful work and have longish, potentially sales cycles where they educate people, they help before they sell. I think it's a core part. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't do it. I think the reasons people don't do it are assumptions that are largely outdated. And
then, interestingly, a lot of them are the same assumptions and reasons that people give for not podcasting. They cost too much, takes too much time, takes too much tech, which I don't know about.
I feel like podcasting and print newsletters are both intimate media. It's just one's reading, one's listening, and podcasting has. I mean, there's other similarities. I think there's other similarities because you can listen to a podcast out and about. You can take a print newsletter out and about. It's easy to stuff into your pocket and read it on the bus or something.
But let's move beyond consumption and think about the person creating it. You said very specifically that it's a way for you to be the first reader and to critique your own material as you write this thing for 2 hours for your own business. I think that is a crucial exercise for anyone undertaking a podcast or doing a print newsletter or whatever, that it gives you the time to reflect and critique your own thoughts. And in our case, what we've done. Like, as podcasters, it always feels like it's like, crack the whip. What's happening the next episode? Get the next one, get the next one, get the next one. Whereas you're taking the time for Help Before You Sell to sit back, have a look at the 4 episodes, and as our custodian of topic guidance for the most part, you're reflecting on that and building it into something that's worth consumption. And an idea that I had almost immediately when you described it properly was, why don't we make an audio version of the newsletter? Which almost seems like an Ouroboros of...
Well, I think you get into a bit of a doom loop there.
Bit, but
the newsletter could become a book. So over the course of the year, if you multiply 2,500 words by 12, you got a decent sized book. You probably got more material than you need for a book. And actually, all you do is maybe even slim it down a bit, add a intro, add a conclusion or next steps, and you got yourself a book. And funnily enough, we are going to be talking about books and self-publishing on a future Help Before You Sell episode. It's another one of my pet subjects.
I just going back to this idea of starting with the conversation and engaging with your thoughts. I was surprised when I read the first edition of the Help Before You Sell newsletter that I got the other day. I was reading it and I thought, I don't remember saying that. I don't remember saying that. That's really interesting. And surprisingly,
this guy sounds really intelligent.
Shut up! I'm going to get there before you do. But therein lies the essence of what we're talking about. Is that when you are in conversation, stuff comes out of your mouth, which you can't. Help me out, guys. There's stuff that comes out in the moment, and I think for most people, doing the podcast first or having the conversation first is generally the way to go, and then doing the podcast second, doing the print newsletter and the written formats second. I'm an anomaly on that in that for my work, I do the print newsletter first because that's my preferred medium. But I think for most people, it makes more sense to have the audio first. And it's perfectly possible now to get the transcript and work that into the other medium.
There would be very few people that emerge from a 30 to 60 minute conversation with someone and remember every single little thing they said. But the amazing thing about technology today, especially with AI transcripting, is that you can extract that and revisit it, which is why, again, what I said before, it seems almost criminal for people who record episodes to just release them and never supervise the content again. Like, oh, well and good, have an editor, but you can use the information that you learned that you said that you didn't even know you say to then guide even more things. And all the better if you can bring someone in on that journey with you intimately in a print newsletter or a podcast.
That was a great insight from Gord, and this episode will almost certainly go out after that one, so we'll be able to put a link back to it. That kind of reframing from you're not creating new episodes, you're creating, every time you have a conversation and you record it, you are creating multiple assets for your business, because you got an audio asset, you got a video asset if you're recording the video, you got written asset if you're then repurposing it as a print newsletter. It's like, it's creating content. You've got to create. And the other thing that I'd never heard before was this idea, and it's just another way of expressing Help Before You Sell, is put information before the sale. Put information before the sale. And if you haven't got a mechanism for regularly creating ever more interesting, valuable information ahead of the sale, then you're missing out. And having conversations with people on your own podcast is the easiest way to do it.
I think then repurposing into multiple formats is an antidote to the creator's curse. The creator's curse is that you're just on this treadmill of creating new stuff. It's new. And actually you never take the time to kind of reflect back on all of the valuable stuff that you've done in the past. And because, as Gordon was saying, it's not a new episode, it's like, oh, it's in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. And you tend to assume that it's only the fresh from the pan stuff that people are interested in. And it just isn't how people interact with your body of work, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
My model broadly is that each podcast episode can become a really great article that could become a LinkedIn article in a LinkedIn newsletter if LinkedIn is your pond that you swim in. It could simultaneously become a really good blog article that you use for SEO purposes, potentially. Over 4 or 5 episodes, you've got more than enough material for a monthly print newsletter. Over a year, over 12 print newsletters, you've got more than enough material for a book. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel across every different channel.
Just have lots of conversations.
So lots of conversations.
Yeah.
So lots of conversations. I feel like I've talked myself into a lot of work this episode. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to go back through all the episodes that we've done and create an article out of it now.
Well,
and
the funniest bit will be when you get to this bit of this episode of the transcript, and you'll be looking at the paragraph talking about you pulling things from the transcript to go into the newsletter, and you'll wonder if it's worth mentioning that the bit we talked about on the podcast is a bit talking about how you take things out of the transcript to put in the newsletter to talk about how you put things out of the transcript in the newsletter.
Podcastception.
Then my head will explode and
Another
I'll go and order a grande frappuccino or whatever.
That's it.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Help Before You Sell, sponsored by Activate Your Podcast. To activate your podcast and help the people who most need you and your services, head to activateyourpodcast.com/help. If you found this episode helpful, please also leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And remember, help more to sell more. See you next time.